A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and to create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands of old, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology. Beyond innovations. Beyond mobility. Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
My parents. मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर।
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर।
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान।
Hi, Ma.
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible India.
Good evening and welcome to day 3 of the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. It's now the 19th year of having newsmakers from across the world join us to discuss current issues facing not just India, but across the region on a global scale. The theme of this year's summit is the New World Order, and so much of that is about managing the pandemic and how to emerge from it, with the world's best health experts and economists joining us. But the New World Order is also about negotiating a more just world because, as we know, these difficult times have also increased all existing inequities. That's why our speakers today are so important. We'll have India's Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, joining us for a conversation, and scientist Dr. Valter Longo, who will speak on the secrets of having a long life. But before that, it's now a privilege of the H3 Summit to host the former Chief Justice of India, and so it's over to my colleague Utkarsh Anand, who will introduce him.
Thank you, Sunitra. Welcome to the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit 2021. We have with us, and it is our privilege to introduce former Chief Justice of India, Justice Dipak Misra. He was the 45th Chief Justice who served as the head of the judiciary for a little over 13 months between 2017 and 2018. Justice Dipak Misra's tenure as the Chief Justice is remarkable in more than one way. When he was heading the bench, the constitution benches in the Supreme Court, several far-reaching verdicts, landmark verdicts breaking new grounds and upholding gender equality, as well as the freedom of speech and expression, these judgments were delivered by the benches presided over by Justice Dipak Misra. Not just that, he also earns the distinction of having presided over the highest number of constitution benches when he was the Chief Justice for that 13 months. When we talk about the important judgments delivered by Justice Dipak Misra's bench, there are several. We can point out at least a few of them, be it whether it is lifting the ban on entry of women into Kerala's Sabrimala temple or decriminalizing adultery and homosexuality. Justice Dipak Misra has always stood for the gender justice and for the rights of people. Justice Dipak Misra's tenure was also unique in more than one way. He always encouraged juniors. I happen to be somebody who covered his tenure as the Chief Justice of Delhi High Court and then as the Chief of the Supreme Court. His courtroom was unique in more than one way. He will be very patient, he will be very accommodating, but very firm and resolute when it came to upholding the rights of people of the country. All these judgments that Justice Dipak Misra gave, they just point out to one thing, that he is somebody who has headed the judiciary with all the possible strength, and it was his tenure during which the Supreme Court could churn out several historical and landmark verdicts. It's a privilege for the Hindustan Times to host Justice Dipak Misra. He is going to talk on the changing dynamics of law and the new world order. He's going to focus on the constitutional rights of the people as well as the online dispute resolution mechanism. It's time to hand over the podium to Justice Dipak Misra, and we are very keenly awaiting for him to speak. Over to you, sir.
Mr. Utkarsh Anand, legal editor of Hindustan Times, ladies and gentlemen, very good evening to you. I must say, I am extremely delighted and feel complimented to associate myself with this summit. Mr. Utkarsh Anand has already told you about the topic I'm going to focus upon. It's the new world order. In the beginning, I would like to quote, and the quote reads like this: "We are the new world order. We are the higher sun and the higher sky for a higher humanity." These are the beautiful lines captured with optimism by Thomas Stark in his book, Best Reality, Ultimate Existence. Throughout human history, our society has been changing at a great speed, and the law has kept pace with this metamorphosis with the aim to live up to the distinctions that human race has been endowed with every human stride getting into motion. The dynamism of law springs up to encapsulate the new societal needs and bring about the necessary stability in the society. Just as the world was gazing on the 21st century the humanity witnessed a transformation that was a real turning point. Such changes acted as a kinetic impetus, which not only ushered in paradigm shift in the society through law, but also in the fields of economy and commerce. The changes, as time has witnessed, have resulted in the creation of a new world order. I do not intend to refer to any theories, but I would like to accentuate the underlying synergies of international relations and the transformation that are taking place today. There is a momentous evolution in international trade, which consequently necessitates a broader canvas if one wishes to effectively appreciate what is going on in our world order at present. While the world is still recovering from the fear psychosis caused by COVID-19 pandemic, the burden has greatly shifted on the organizations having pan-world reach to act as the building blocks to bring the world to normalcy. It's quite evident that we are living in the growing age of commercial activity, which is on the rise across the nations like never before. This rise calls for directly proportional progress in the branch of economic and commercial laws in all major trading nations of the world to facilitate the process. The rapid expansion of digital technology has made a monumental impact on commercial activities. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have switched to the digital environment, which offers a global reach with infinite capacity and stupendous connectivity. New and innovative business models have come up which utilize this ever-expanding digital environment to maximize the gains by enhancing the market reach. To adapt to the concept of new normal requires a great deal of effort. It is to be remembered, newer the challenge, greater has to be the human effort. Not for nothing, long back, Molière, a famous French writer, had said, "The greater the obstacle, the more glory in overcoming it." The new world order is bound to witness glory. Today, cross-border flow of services and technology require a new type of facilitator from the legal perspective. With the global economy creating an interdependent and borderless world, it would be fallacious if we ignore India's emergence as the world's most potential market, where every big brand yearns to have its footprints. The dynamic reforms that began in the 90s catalyzed unprecedented growth rates, which were driven by a large and a young workforce and a growing consumer class. Initially, I must tell you, e-commerce, which has been the most potent force in heralding the new world order, stood limited to only sell services. But with the flux of time, the logistics got involved with such services, and the shift from just selling services to selling gazillion products online came in no time, as the consumers understood that e-commerce is more than a workable buying option with a predictable delivery time. As we are talking about world trade and e-commerce transactions, Occurrence of disputes cannot be brushed aside. In the emerging world order, the significance of alternative dispute resolution mechanism has risen, and COVID-19 pandemic has enabled the disputants to take recourse to online dispute resolution system. The present pandemic conditions have brought in private dispute resolution centers, and courts around the world have embraced technology-based approach, and adequate protocols have been allowed entry to make video conferencing enabled participation in the proceedings. It is in challenging times like the present that we can make innovations and use technology as a transformational tool. I must apprise you, in a situation of adversity, one should never resign to fate, but summon his inner strength. As a representative of the human race, none should accept defeat in natural calamities, because such acceptance of defeat tantamounts to abject surrender and loss of creativity and loss of opportunity. Faith in oneself and confidence in one's ability to remain in constant nowness makes each individual a captain of the ship of his life and enables him to metamorphose the calamity to an advantage. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, character. And that is a vow not to be vanquished. The new arrangement in the form of online dispute resolution has to be embraced with an open mind. The openness of mind to accept the idea would be the real adaptation of the new world order. Of course, while saying so, I'm absolutely conscious of the fact physical hearings can never be substituted with digital hearing or video conferencing. I have always maintained the stand that nothing can be a substitute for physical hearing. However, both can coexist to mark the manifestation of the new order, since adaptation of the new technology has become the warrant of the time. It would redefine access to justice, which is a fundamental right under our Constitution. Presently, I shall advert to dynamic and forward-looking constitutional rights that have been recognized under our constitutional framework. Constitutional rights define and shape the life of citizens and the society in general. Their affirmative exposition and meaningful appreciation constitute the lifeblood of citizenry aspirations. These rights become kinetic with dynamic, vibrant, and pragmatic interpretation. Constitutional rights have to be construed and developed in such a manner that their real intent and existence percolate to the lowest rungs in the society. That is the raison d'etre for the constitutional rights. It must meet the marginalized. The emerging world order calls for a constitutional democracy to adorn the expected role for effective implementation of constitutional rights. It is the obligation of the courts to see that rights are not even slightly affected or dented. The other wings of the state should understand the command under the Constitution to implement the orders of the courts so that the constitutional democracy maintains its sacrosanctity. Absence of affectation is a positive sign of the new world order. The judiciary, while performing the most important function of being the final arbiter of the Constitution, has acted as the protector of rights guaranteed under the Constitution by embarking upon the journey of fruitful engagement. The legitimate expectations of a citizen under the constitutions have to be met, and no individual, and I mean no individual, should remotely regard it as an object of chemical experimentation. No experimentation is permissible. It is to be borne in mind that the rights do not remain stagnant and confined. On the contrary, constitutional rights are ever growing, perpetually continuous, and embody a telescopic and expanded vision so as to enrich the future life of a citizenry. The nowness and the newness get into an inseparable wedlock. Constitutional courts in a meaningful democracy have assumed the role of ardent guards for strengthening the rights. This has set the process of judicial statesmanship, and it has paved the path for the ascendance of rights. The sense of creativity is the order of the day, and it is not to be marginalized by any competitive, conservative perception. I repeat these three words: competitive, conservative perception. With each passing day, the scope, extent, and the ambit of fundamental rights have constantly been expanded only to be compatible with the changing needs of the society. The courts have refused to adopt a narrow and a pedantic approach as regards the interpretation of the constitutional rights. The approach has become progressive, being aberrant to any regressive method. Now, I would like to share the dynamic and steady approach adopted by the Supreme Court of India for recognizing some of the most important fundamental rights. The discussion about free will and freedom bear a direct relation to one's right to affirm to one's gender identity. Towards the end of the last decade, the larger bench of the Supreme Court ruled over the issue of privacy. I do not intend to refer to the analytical spectrum of various concurring views. What matters is that the right to privacy has been recognized as a fundamental right and expansive scope of Article 21 of the Constitution. The modern approach in the New World Order scenario has changed the ambit of our human rights, and there has been a perpetual shift among the citizens. Psychologically, every person has a desire to choose, but such a choice has to be within the constitutional framework and boundaries of law that withstand scrutiny. Thus, the right to choose and the right to self-determination have been recognized as aspects of human dignity. It's also emphasized that in some circumstances, like that of affirming one's gender identity, is an integral part of human dignity that will sustain the individuality of the individual. Non-acceptance of individuality affects one's sense of belonging to humanity. Therefore, modern constitutional thinking crafts principles that same-sex relationship is not a criminal offense. Live-in relationship is not illegal. A major has a right to marry according to his or her choice, and no one should intervene. The interreligious or intercaste marriages are to be respected if it is with consent. The Khap Panchayats should be kept themselves at bay. No one can take law into his own hands and engage in mob lynching. A filmmaker or an author can express his ideas, and a law cannot accept a provision to be valid if it had a chilling effect on freedom of speech and expression. Women who are entitled to join the National Defense Academy are eligible to permanent commission in the army. And to establish an offense under POCSO, skin-to-skin contact is not relevant. Having said that, let me announce, being a citizen of the largest democracy of the world, I would like to highlight that the concept of transformative constitutionalism has kept our Indian constitution moving and active. Transformation as a single word is diagonally opposite of something static and stagnant. It denotes change and evolves in response to the changing requirements of the times. To give an example, a voter has a right to be informed about the criminal antecedents of contesting candidates, and the responsibility of political parties in that regard has been clearly laid down by the Supreme Court. The Apex Court has issued directions and reiterate the same so that the voters can exercise their right in an appropriate manner. The compliance has to be dutifully done. There cannot be a deviation in such a spectrum. The world populace is adapting to the ways of the emerging norms and is moving ahead with the expansive approach to basic human rights. Therefore, there cannot be a static judicial interpretation of the Constitution, for that would bring a kind of pathogen burden in the arteries of citizenry rights. There has to be also cultivation of mindset to welcome the new order and new ideas. Psychological acceptance should be the new norm. The vision for the future, ladies and gentlemen, should not be entrenched in the noise of the assumed negligence, but must be embedded in the refinement of logical wisdom and silence of the intellect. May I tell you without the slightest reservation that noise makes a society lose the substance and hold on to the evening shadow. In conclusion, I would like to say that the new world order shall not allow this planet to become a cactus land. The new generation, I am absolutely indubitable, will not allow the path of progress to be paralyzed. They shall not permit any dent or allow any decay, and move on the path of progressive purpose without giving any room to pointlessness. The new generation intend to subserve the idea of planetization and hold the universal goodwill in their hand and march on the path of constant awakening. There is no space for comatose. There is room for rise and awakening. Before I part, I must congratulate the Hindustan Times to arrange such a summit which really focuses on the new world order and makes everyone understand his significance, his importance, and his contribution to the entire humanity. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, sir. It has been a privilege and an honor to host you at the summit. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Justice Dipak Misra at the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. Stay tuned for our next session with External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group, big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and to create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands of old, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology. Beyond innovations. Beyond mobility. Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
My parents. मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर।
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर।
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान।
Hi, Ma.
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible India.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group, big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands of old, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology? Beyond innovations? Beyond mobility? Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
My parents. मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर।
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर।
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान।
हाय माँ।
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible India.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and the more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group, big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands alone, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology. Beyond innovations. Beyond mobility. Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
My parents. मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर.
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर.
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान. हाय माँ.
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible India.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and the more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal culture.
Welcome back. Our next speaker at the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit is India's Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, who before 2019, when Narendra Modi came back to power, was India's top diplomat, serving as Foreign Secretary since 2015. Dr. Jaishankar, who has invaluable insights, serving as envoy to China and the United States, areas that are the crux of India's foreign policy. And one of the key challenges for the government over the past year and a half has been the impasse at the border with China. And we're looking forward to Dr. Jaishankar's insight into that and all foreign policy issues. So it's over to Pramit Pal Chaudhary, who will be in conversation with him.
Thank you, Shanatra. Dr. Jaishankar, you've been in repeated speeches over the past several years. You've said that geopolitical trends and shifts are on a scale that you've never seen before in all your decades as a diplomat. So looking a little forward, since we're now at the end of this year, coming into the next year, what would be, in your view, the three diplomatic priorities for India and for yourself?
First of all, Pramit, good to be with all of you, and it's a pleasure to connect through the Hindustan Times with the world. Yes, I have been writing and speaking about the pace of change in the world being quicker. The world is constantly evolving, so in that sense, change is a constant. But clearly, it could be geopolitical, it could be geoeconomic, it could be something like the pandemic. It's like what we saw in terms of the American withdrawal from Afghanistan. Obviously, there's a lot happening which is accelerating the pace of change, if you would. Now, in terms of your question, so what would be our priorities? I think there are two ways of answering that. One way is a kind of a geography way, which is, I would say, obviously for us, the neighborhood and the extended neighborhood. By that I mean the Indian Ocean, ASEAN, Southeast Asia, the Gulf, Central Asia. This is what I would call the extended neighborhood. They would be my number one priority. Number two, of course, would be you could say the big powers, the countries which shape the global order, and having good relations with them so that we are treated well and our interests are recognized and advanced in the global order. And my third priority, of course, would be developing steadily a larger footprint, more relationships, a greater constituency, moving towards a global visibility, you could say, conscious that this would take time. Now, that's one kind of answer I can give you. The other answer I could do, slice it very, very differently in terms of issues rather than geography. I would say, no question about it, for me, my number one priority would be security, national security. In diplomacy, I would put security above all other considerations. If I have to trade something, because security is usually anything you do is often irreversible. The stakes are very high when it comes to security. So, and I know that's not always been our case. We have not, sometimes we got confused. I mean, you've had situations in the 60s where we didn't put the necessary emphasis on security. The second would be, I would say, economic development or national progress. I think there are a lot of lessons that we could and we should learn, especially from East Asia, from Southeast Asia. countries who have single-mindedly used foreign policy for getting capital, technology, best practices, and being very clear that diplomacy is a process which should serve such a goal, not an end in itself. And here too, I think at times we have not had that focus. I mean, we actually had a period where when you looked at where Indian diplomacy stood in terms of our economic interests and what we could get from the world, they were not focused. I mean, and this was an attitude right at the top. I mean, you actually had prime ministers of the country who thought it was vulgar to discuss business or sort of on visits. I mean, it was simply not done. So I think that's to me clearly a second. And the third, I would say, I would put it as a sort of standing of the country. How do you advance that? How do you get that across strongly? We could call it branding today in a way. But I again lay it out in that order because if I were presented with a choice, which sometimes you are in real life, that would be my order. I mean, if I were to trade off, that is exactly the way I would look at it.
Let's dig into some of what you've just said. So when you've talked about the relationships of the big powers, the first big power that we're obviously having some problems with is China. And it ties in with what you had said about the issue of national security and to some degree even with our economy. You have a situation now that the situation on our border is substantially different from what we've experienced over the past roughly 30 years. A large deployment of troops, our weapons and so on, something we thought we had an understanding with the Chinese would not happen. Is this now the future of our relationship on the border with China? And if so, what does that mean for us as a geopolitically? How will we adjust geopolitically to this new situation on the border?
Well, I mean, first of all, in terms of bringing forces to the border, it's not an impression that we had or we thought we had an understanding. We had it in cold print in 2 agreements. So there's no ambiguity on that score. There were very, very clear-cut commitments not to mass forces on the border. And those commitments stand violated from as of 2020 spring. So the issue, at the end of the day, is not, I think we shouldn't lose the woods for the trees. I think the trees are individual, you can say, incidents or attempts to unilaterally change the status quo or to violate the LAC. I mean, and those, they are deployed, we are deployed. Yes, we are sometimes uncomfortably closely deployed. And there are discussions going on by an integrated team on both sides. But the woods are really the fact that it's now, we are coming to the close of 2 years where the assumptions, the understandings, the agreements which guided the management of the border areas, those today, I mean, have question marks against them. And I think that's a matter of concern, because you have to ask yourself, so why is this happening? What does it reflect? I think those are completely legitimate questions for anybody who's looking at this situation to ponder about. And as we have made clear, the state of the relationship at the end of the day will reflect the state of the border. I mean, you can't have a tense, high friction border and have great relations, in all other parts of life. It doesn't work that way. So it is inevitable that this will sort of spill over. It has already spilled over into other domains, and the expectation that somehow we will contain it in a narrow sense and carry on with the rest of life, I think is not a realistic one. So we do have I think a significant issue there for us, also for them, because I frankly don't think it's in the interest of either country that our relationship goes off in this direction.
As you said, that's going to be difficult though with a country that, as you've said, has violated existing written signed agreements. But one of the responses, obviously, that we've taken has been the Quad and the larger sort of Indo-Pacific policy that we have now become a great champion of. Now, the Quad is an interesting organization. It's perhaps unique in the sense that it isn't military, at least not officially. It's built around technology, about finding global solutions, providing an example. On the technology side, and I think this is important because it goes in directly into what you were talking about, the economics of the future and how diplomacy in India must now be really focused on that. There's these technology coalitions that the Quad has should we say, announced or planning to put together. How successful have we been in getting other countries to join or look at those coalitions in a positive sense?
You are making a somewhat deterministic statement here, because from the last question you said, oh, that leads to Quad. I think if you look at the chronology, I would challenge that straight away for two reasons. In the current incarnation, the Quad actually started in 2017, September of 2017, whereas this round of our difficulties on the India-China border dates back to 2020. So I think to ascribe that as a causal factor, I think you need to be a little more broad-based in the explanation. I think it's important for us as a Quad participant to be very clear that Quad is for something, it is not against somebody. And I don't just say this as a throwaway line because it sounds nice, because in the last 2 years, we have been able to demonstrate that Quad is for something, that we've been able to show, okay, today you have a pandemic, so can the Quad do something in terms of vaccine? We have sensitivity in terms of technology. Are there things which Quad can do in terms of more trusted and secure technologies? Are there things the Quad can do in terms of promoting reliable and resilient supply chains? Can we work on connectivity projects? Can we cooperate to ensure maritime security and safety? So I would ask you to step back. Don't be over-obsessed with one country and one situation. Think of it this way, that the Cold War of two-power dominance ended, the unipolar world ended. A certain kind of globalized world, which we saw after that, is now very much a question mark. There are big challenges out there. No single country is able to respond to it by itself. So you are actually seeing a larger international development, which is a bunch of countries whose interests are similar, whose concerns are similar, who have the ability and the confidence to work with each other, come together. Now, I would even suggest to you, and here again, I today have a good example to make my case. It doesn't necessarily have to be even in the East Asia or in Southeast Asia. I mean, you've seen that we've also started to engage with a 4-country groupings in West Asia, in the Middle East, India, US, Israel, and the UAE. I would suggest to you that this kind of combos, that countries coming together saying, I'm not interested in a formal relationship. I don't want a detailed, list of obligations and responsibility. I want a practical arrangement where if you and I get along and I get along with somebody else out there, we can sit and work together to our mutual advantage. When it works, it works. One day, if we feel it doesn't work, I mean, we we have not invested in something which is a big deal. But I do think that this much more ad hoc, open-minded, open-ended, comfortable way of working of groupings of countries, this is the future that I see.
What are the next set of combos you're working on then?
Oh, you'll have to read about it. So I am not going to tip my hand.
So you've mentioned about China. Let's talk a little about the United States. You've mentioned about what India stands for. Now, there's obviously been some concerns with the Biden administration, or at least within the Americans who support Biden, about the state of democracy in India. But we have been invited to a democracy summit by Biden, and noticeably some other countries in our neighborhood have not. What do you see the democracy summit going to be about? What does India bring to that democracy summit?
Look, first of all, as someone who travels a fair amount, and I have an opportunity to see other countries, meet other people of other countries, make judgments, I'm very confident about the state of my democracy. My elections are not in doubt. They're not contested. My electoral process is not in doubt. My popular participation in election is rising. I mean, you take every index of, of how democratized we have become. I would argue that actually it's all growing. Now, I'm also very aware that in a way, in the very success lies a problem, because to a large extent, it has brought to the political forefront a different set of players, people who are not from big cities, who are not from English medium schools, who in many ways are kind of self-made people. And I think a lot of the political argumentation of our country is between, in a sense, you could say, the old order and the emerging order within the country. And because the world is globalized and the world is polarized and the world is very ideological, a lot of this translates into people being judgmental about, oh, your democracy is not working well, largely because it's not about people like us anymore. So I would say, very frankly, I mean, if we were to participate in a gathering of democracies, I do so on my credentials. I'm very confident of those credentials. Very frankly, I would assert those credentials are very much better than a lot of countries and a lot of people who are passing comments on us.
So the Democracy Summit, do we have something that we want to raise there, or we will contribute to?
Well, I think, it is a summit where views would be expressed and, views would be exchanged. And as I said, I think there is a lot that we can say for ourselves, and I expect that would happen.
Talking about the neighborhood now, you talked about national security, and obviously there's been a lot of concern about what's happened with the resurrection of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, and the state of, to some degree, state of our relationship with Pakistan. We have, if you wish, locked the situation with the UN Security Council resolution. The Taliban are struggling to get recognition. Do you see that holding, and for how long will that be successful in holding the Taliban?
I think the UN Security Council resolution is like a expression. It was passed at the end of August, barely 2 weeks after Taliban captured Kabul. It was an expression of a widespread concern in the world on a set of issues. The most prominent of which was, would Afghan soil be used by terrorists, by foreign fighters to target other countries. Also, the nature of the regime in Afghanistan, whether it would be inclusive or not, the nature of the governance in Afghanistan, whether, how would they treat women, children, minorities. And finally, at that time, the issue of Afghans who wanted the freedom of movement in and out of Afghanistan. I would say a lot of those concerns, to the best of my understanding, and as I said, I meet my counterparts, I talk to a lot of people, I think they remain live concerns. At the end of the day, after all, countries who want to make decisions about Afghanistan would make decisions which they are comfortable with, to which they can justify and rationalize to their own people. Some of the issues which the Security Council resolution raised are exactly the issues which various polities are debating and expecting their own foreign ministries and their diplomats to do something about it. We've seen that in some cases. I've seen it recently in some European countries as well, where there was a very, I would say, strong debate which followed contacts with the Taliban. So my sense is that the situation on the ground is a very complicated one, and we'll really have to watch where this goes. But it also, I would say this very frankly, it also justifies the prudence that we have shown, not being in a hurry, whichever way, being deliberative about the choices, about being careful about our assessments, not being led by arguments that, everybody else is doing it, how can we be left behind? If I were to follow that line of argument, I shouldn't be running a foreign ministry, I should just be outsourcing it to everybody else.
You don't see the expected humanitarian problems coming from both a combination of economic collapse and probably famine or famine-like situation breaking the international consensus on Afghanistan?
No, there's no consensus about staying away or being indifferent or unhelpful to a humanitarian situation. On the contrary, there is a consensus that however difficult the politics of the situation may be, that there are people out there, real people out there, and we have to do something for them. And we are very much part of that viewpoint as well. Please note that we have been, from the time the UN Secretary General convened a meeting on the humanitarian situation, we've been very upfront saying that, look, we helped previous regimes in Afghanistan. We see at the end of the day that it was for the Afghan people, that if the Afghan people today need food, if the Afghan people need medicines, I think our relationship with them is long enough and strong enough that we should be doing something about it. And we are trying to do that. We have offered to send 50,000 metric tons of wheat, and we are seeking unhindered access to Afghanistan. And we are trying to find a way by which whatever we supply is obviously distributed in a very responsible and fair manner. So these are all ongoing situations. So I don't accept that, the humanitarian situation will somehow get people to do things which they are not comfortable with. I think everybody is comfortable actually helping out with the humanitarian situation.
Let's talk about a country that we don't actually focus on, but it's increasingly becoming prominent in the news as far as our relationship is concerned, which is the United Arab Emirates. It'll be the first country, I believe, Prime Minister Modi will visit next year. And it's a country that we've seen increasingly involved in a large number of other things, including this West Asia, quote, quad, unquote. And it's been a heart of a lot of the economic diplomacy that we've been doing. How do you describe the relationship now between us and the United Arab Emirates? and what's driving it?
I would say, first of all, we don't focus on it, we focus on it a lot. In fact, my next engagement is to go for the National Day in the next half an hour. And my next trip abroad, which is on Saturday, is to visit the UAE. So it has been very much one of the focal points, one of our important partners, I would say, especially after 2014. It's a very interesting example, really, because it's a very big energy partner. There's a large Indian expatriate population. There's a lot of offshore finance business which is done there. And yet, if you look at it from the 1980s till 2015, it actually seriously suffered from a want of political attention. If my memory serves me right, before Narendra Modi went to Abu Dhabi, UAE, on a visit, the previous Prime Minister to go was Indira Gandhi. So nobody went, and this, mind you, is one of the key countries of your extended neighborhood. So it tells you a lot, in a way, about the foreign policy, the diplomacy in previous years when you spoke about priorities. And I put those very same criteria which I gave you in the priority answer. It's enormously important for us on national security. It is hugely relevant for us on economic growth in our national development. And the fact that today, it hosts such a large diaspora, and it is in many ways a country which is extremely active in the international scene. It is very, very vital for us when it comes to branding. So I think it's, in fact, a very good example of the kind of things that have changed in the last few years. The fact that we are far more, in a sense, clear-headed about what our priorities are, who should we be engaging, what should we be getting out of it, what are the outcomes we are looking for. And this is certainly a relationship where I can tell you all the attention that we have invested and they have invested, it has been repaid in very, very impressive outcomes.
One of the things that it used to be always said, and in fact, I remember Indian diplomats used to say, was that our West Asia policy was a set of bilateral relations with countries like UAE, Iran, Israel, and a lot of the job was to ensure that these didn't get entangled given the tensions that exist traditionally in West Asia. Now you've created a Quad, if you wish, and I would say a fifth silent partner to that is actually Saudi Arabia. Is this a sign that we are going to, should we say, multilateralize our West Asia policy? We're prepared to work with groups of countries there?
No, I think it's a natural evolution, because in this particular case, I think the Abraham Accords have opened up a lot of possibilities on connectivity, logistics, trade, technology, innovation, startups, even agriculture, water. So if we have in this case, let us say, three very strong, solid relationships which are present in a fairly small geography. Now, I think it's to me a basic management solution, that you would try to max the gains out of this relationship, and instead of doing three separate and firewalled relationships, you could continue with that. It doesn't mean I still have a great bilateral relationship with Japan and Australia and US despite a Quad. So a collective is like an additional layer that comes, because there are many things you can do as a collective. When four countries come together, it's not 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. I think the answer is probably a much higher numeral than 4. So we will see that. And look, I am reasonably confident a country of our size, our interest, our influence, our capability, and frankly our skills. We should not, we should not get into that logic that if I'm doing something with one country, somehow it becomes a zero-sum game with another. I think today's diplomacy, how to deal with partners with contradictory interests, sometimes how to achieve goals which may appear to be contradictory. This is part of the much more complex world that we operate in, and certainly the Gulf and West Asia is a great illustration of that complexity.
Well, I'll just go the final word now. I'll just say that some people are arguing or would look at around our neighborhood over the past few years and argue that given we have a Taliban regime in Afghanistan, we have Chinese troops massed in our border, that perhaps our national security environment is actually worsened over the past few years. How would you respond to that?
As compared to when you had 2611 ports in Sri Lanka being built by other people, change of government in Maldives through non-democratic means, separatists and terrorists being given shelter by some of the countries to our east. So would you compare it to that and say we are worse off than that?
Well, I leave that to you, but I think you've given a great answer. Thank you, Dr. Jaishankar. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands abroad, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology. Beyond innovations. Beyond mobility. Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
My parents. मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर।
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर।
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान।
हाय माँ।
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible India.
Welcome back, and now it's time for the last session of day 3, and in some ways we've really kept the best for last. Our next speaker, Dr. Valter Longo, is a specialist doing research in the field of longevity and healthy eating. His book, The Longevity Diet, is a bestseller, and Time magazine called him one of the 50 most influential people in healthcare. So, intermittent fasting or not, let's listen to him talking to Sanchita Sharma.
Thank you, Sunetra. So I'm going to start the session by, you can fast in many ways. One, of course, is not eating at all. But then there's several other ways of fasting. You can exclude certain foods and food groups from your diet. You can eat within a limited time period, or you can eat on some days and not eat on others. But now we have a nutrition program that mimics fasting and tricks your body into thinking you're fasting when you're eating certain foods. So this is fabulous because it brings the benefits of fasting while helping you avoid hunger pangs, fatigue, and headaches that are associated with fasting. So I'm going to invite Professor Longo to tell us more about that, to also guide us on how we can adopt this program in our daily lives. And he's going to have a short presentation over the next 20 to 25 minutes, which will be followed by questions and answers. Over to you, Professor Longo.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you for the invitation. And so next slide. Yeah. And so I'm going to talk about fasting. And I want to start here with this slide that you see on COVID, just to point out that aging and the health status of a person is so important for so many different diseases, including COVID. So you see those bars that are progressively higher, and they're the age risk of mortality, the age-dependent or the age-associated risk of mortality from COVID. You see then the last bar where it says 14 point something, that's for people that are over 80 years of age. So, there's a 100-fold difference in the risk of dying of COVID based on whether you are, 20 years old or over 80 years old. But then if you look below, you see that there's also this very big difference based on whether you have age-related diseases going from cardiovascular, diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, hypertension, cancer. So patients, subjects that were already suffering from age-related conditions, now they're also at a much higher risk for death from COVID. Next slide. Yeah. So what do we do about aging, and how do we regulate the aging process so that we can benefit in many different ways? And so I like to show some of the stories from centenarians. This is a lady in the city that I live in now in Los Angeles, and she got to 115 years of age, and she was very careful with everything she did. And so she said that the formula for making it to such an old age was never drinking or fooling around. So that was Gertrude Baines in Los Angeles. But next slide. But this was very different from in France, Madame Calmont. And Madame Calmont did not pay attention to their lifestyle. She smoked until 117 and ate lots of sweets. So what are the how do we intervene on aging? And I think we can argue based on maybe 100 years of research, and nutrition is by far right now. I mean, eventually things might change, and pharmacologically we might be able to intervene in the aging process. But right now, nutrition is probably the most powerful way to alter how fast we age, and also alter whether we're going to get age-related diseases, diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative diseases, etc. Next slide. And so I started working on in the early 90s, 30 years ago actually. I started working on the genes that control aging, but eventually I realized that the technology, and so we were successful in identifying lots of the genes that control the aging process in simple organisms all the way to humans. But then I realized that the technology and what we call biohacking, so figuring out how to interfere with the normal processes, this is very important. But tradition and where we come from is as important. So how do you combine these two things? And I thought, after so many years, maybe about 20 years ago, we started thinking about. So I was seeing that simple organisms that were starved, bacteria were becoming longer lived, and yeast were becoming longer lived than mice. And so I started thinking there's something very powerful about not just reducing the calories, about small, short periods of fasting, and so I started looking at the literature, realized that lots of animals, so for example, here the emperor penguins, they have periods in where they become large, they gain weight, they even become obese, and then they have long periods that can last for months in where they don't eat at all, right? So then this allowed me to understand that some of these things that we see as diseases, like diabetes, are really part of the history of all organisms. So that you accumulate as much fat as possible so that you can survive. And so there's actually survival mechanism. Now, of course, the problem is now we accumulate lots of fat, but we never use it because the winter time never comes. So we have the abundance time, but not the times where food is limited or absent. Next slide. So just to show you the one slide about how fasting revolutionizes metabolism, right? So I always challenge people and say, try to find something that has more effects on more cells and on more genes than fasting. And I've been asking these questions to lots of people all over the world for 20 years. I could never even get somebody to challenge me theoretically. Say, well, I think this cocktail of drugs would be causing more changes than fasting. So it never happened. So for example, as I just mentioned, during fasting now, these fats, the adipocytes are the fat cells. So fats are released from fat cells, and they go to the liver. In the liver, there's a generation of ketone bodies, and these ketone bodies now go all over the body. And from the word ketogenesis, right? So the body is now having to survive not from food that comes from the outside, but food that comes from the inside, and particularly food that comes from the abdominal fat. So this is where our reservoir, our energy reservoir is. Next slide. Yeah. So for a long time, so people have this illusion that we use words like fasting, and I always say fasting is. And people ask me, journalists ask me, is fasting good for you? And I say, fasting, it doesn't mean anything. It's just like eating. What is eating good for you? Yeah, some type of eating is good for you. Some amount of eating is good for you, but some of it is very bad for you. And that's the same is true for fasting, right? So for example, people don't realize that there are a lot of side effects, for example, for water-only fasting. And at some point, if you fast for too long, your metabolism slows down. And so a good thing becomes actually a bad thing that can last for a long, long time, right? So it's not really about fasting or eating. It's about how you eat and how you fast. And so we've been spending decades on this. And eventually, we started maybe 15 years ago, we started a clinical trial on water-only fasting in cancer patients because we were showing that the fasting was protecting normal cells and was killing the cancer cells. But we realized that nobody wanted to do water-only fasting. And also there were lots of side effects potentially associated with water-only fasting. So everybody was worried about, sending the patients back home, patient receiving chemotherapy, having to do water-only fasting. So we developed, thanks to the U.S. government, a fasting-mimicking diet. And so the fasting-mimicking diet is a low-calorie, it's a plant-based. So everything comes from plants. Low-calorie, low sugar, low protein, high unsaturated fats, right? So the high levels of olive oil and nuts and high-fat components that are vegan-based. Next slide. Recently, just a few months ago, we published something that we have been meaning to publish for a long, long time, and which is lots of people, and I'll talk in a second about the ideal everyday diet, right? But lots of people say, I'm not going to change anything. In fact, most people are not willing to change their diet very much. And so I always thought, what if we could say, try to have a good diet, but if you can't, at least do periodically a fasting mimicking diet, right? This fasting mimicking diet that I just told you about, which lasts 5 days, right? So we did exactly this. We used the human version, in fact, with mice. And so we took mice, we gave them lots of calories, lots of fat, so the mice became very big with this diet. But at the same time, we used the same diet on mice that had, another group of mice, and that once a month they did a 5-day fasting mimicking diet. And the results were really remarkable. And I have to say that the first student, the first author of this paper we just published is an Indian student, a postdoc researcher that works in my lab in Los Angeles, Amrenda Mishra. And so remarkably, the next slide, you see, for example, cholesterol. With age, if you look at those purple bars, right, those where it says HFCD, that's a high fat and calorie diet, right? So, and if you look at HFCD on the far right, there are these obese, very large mice, right? So the mice become very large on this high fat and calorie diet. But look at what happens to the mice in the middle. We have the same all the time, high fat and calorie diet, besides for 5 days a month, right? So 5 days a month now of this fasting mimicking diet are sufficient to prevent this obesity phenotype. But also, if you look at the left and look at the consequences of just 5 days a month, all middle age and all mice develop this high cholesterol in the middle and in the right, where it says 23 cycles. But if you look at where it says a high fat calorie diet and FMD, the cholesterol level are back to normal. So the fasting mimicking diet is able to return the cholesterol level, not just the obesity, but also the cholesterol level to normal, to those of the mice that are on a regular diet, where it says control. Those are mice that eat a normal diet and maintain a normal weight. Next slide. If you look at, next slide, if you look at lean body mass, you see there, this is a muscle mass. And see, most dietary intervention will affect negatively the muscle mass. But you see that the mice, and it doesn't matter what diet they control, the high-fat diet or the high-fat diet plus the fasting-mimicking diet, and the lean body mass, the muscle mass, is not affected. And in fact, we have shown in the past that a lifelong use of the FMD actually increase bone density even in mice on the normal diet compared to mice on the normal diet, right? So there is a big effect on fat that you see there. In the center is the high-fat diet, and the green is the high-fat diet plus the fasting mimicking diet, but there is no effect on the lean body mass. And if you look at on the right serum ketones, you see that in the last one on the right, where it says high-fat calorie diet plus FMD, you see that the ketone bodies are higher. Remember, the ketone bodies are evidence of the breakdown of fat, and this is done 4 days after the mice return to this normal high-calorie, high-fat diet. So even after they return to this high-calorie, high-fat diet, they're still burning fat, right? And that's exactly what we want. We want these short periods of fasting mimicking diet to rewire, reprogram the system so it keeps burning fat instead of accumulating fat. Next slide. So this is the longevity, right? So again, the mice on the right are on a high-fat diet. The one in the center are on a high-fat diet plus the 5 days a month of the fasting mimicking diet, and the one on the left are on a controlled diet. And you see that the purple curve, the high-fat diet tremendously shortens the lifespan and the health span of the mice, and just as 5 days a month of the fasting mimicking diet is able to restore that and bring the lifespan very close to the one of mice that are on a good diet. Next slide. Yeah, so what about people? So a long time ago, we developed, as I mentioned, a version for cancer patients, and then eventually we developed a version for normal people, and we tested this clinically. So I started a company called El Nutra, and I don't take any consulting from the company, and I donate 100%. I will donate 100% of my shares to charity. But I thought it was very important to have this clinically tested and to make sure that we have something that is starting to look like medicine for people, rather than have people improvise. So again, this is it's plant-based, high-fat, low-calorie, low-sugar, low-protein diets the last 5 days, and we tested this in people of all kinds of nationalities here in Los Angeles. and this is 100 participants, but I have to say now we confirm these results with multiple additional clinical trials which are not yet published. So people for 5 days a month, they went on this diet, and then like for the mice that I just showed you, they went on whatever diet they had for the rest of the time. Some of them were obese, some of them were overweight, some of them were normal weight. Next slide. And you see here, as I mentioned, as I showed for the mice, the body weight decreases, the abdominal fat decreases. The left is the control group, and on the right is the loss of body weight, abdominal fat, waist circumference in the FMD group. And you see there's major losses in body weight, but it's all abdominal fat and fat coming from the belly. But the lean body mass, the relative lean body mass is absolute is not affected. So the muscle mass is not affected, but the relative lean body mass. So they're now losing fat, but maintaining normal muscle mass. And this is why you see go up actually and not down. So this is really a very interesting and very rare, by the way, combination, right? Most diets will make everything go down, including the muscle. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so then we see differential effects, right? So with most diets, everything is driven down, but with this 5 days a month of the fasting-mimicking diet. So for example, those that have normal glucose levels, those that are not pre-diabetic nor diabetic, we don't see much of an effect of these 3 cycles. But if those that are pre-diabetic, they have high glucose level, blood glucose level, now we see a drop, and most of them return to the normal glucose level. Next slide. The same is true for IGF-1. This is a growth factor that is involved is a marker, a potential risk factor for cancer. Again, those that start at normal levels, they have a big decline, but those at risk for cancer, after 3 cycles of the fasting mimicking diet, they have a major drop in IGF-1. Next slide. C-reactive protein is a marker for inflammation, systemic inflammation. So the body is in an inflammatory state. And again, those that start with no inflammation, no changes, but those that start with moderate to high levels of CRP, they have a drop in C-reactive protein. Next slide. And the same is true for hypertension, which I am not showing, and also cholesterol here. Those that start with cholesterol above 200, they have a bigger drop in cholesterol level. So you see, it's not hitting one risk factor for disease, but this fasting mimicking diet and these fasting refeeding cycles are going after the function, right? So most people that are 20 years old, they don't have high cholesterol, they don't have inflammation, they don't have hypertension, they don't have risk factor for cancer. So these cycles are bringing the biological age back. Probably now we're working on a study, attempting to show that. So we'll find out soon, But every indication is for this dietary pattern to make people younger in some ways. Next slide. Okay, so what about instead the diet that should be used every day? So we've been focusing, I call it a 5-pillar system. I don't want to go through all the 5 pillars, but I say if you look at multiple disciplines in science and put it all together, epidemiological studies, study of centenaria, clinical studies, basic research, study of complex system, I came up with this and really reflective of hundreds and hundreds of studies. So the longevity diet. So other than what I just told you, this FMD periodically, maybe 3 times a year, the mostly plant-based diet, but you can be vegan and you can be very healthy, but it's not easy to be vegan and healthy. And so, for most people, I recommend, it's possible. So, but for most people, I think eating fish a few times a week is recommendable. And low protein intake, but sufficient, low but sufficient. So there should be about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So if you weigh 50 kilograms, it's about 40 grams of protein. If you weigh 80 kilograms, about 65 grams of proteins. So, and the diet should be high complex carbohydrate and healthy fats. So the olive oil, the nuts, and then lots of vegetable, lots of legumes, high nourishment, omega-3, vitamins, minerals. This is very important that the body has all the nutrients it needs. And then 12 hours a day. So keep the food intake for 12 hours a day. Don't go much longer or much shorter. So stay right about, so 8 a.m., 8 p.m., 7 a.m., 7 p.m. So eat within those 12 hours and not outside of the 12 hours. And then I say for people that are, and that we're starting a large clinical trial of 500 people now in southern Italy. And so for people that are overweight, obese, or tend to get there, have breakfast. Skipping breakfast is not recommendable. Always have breakfast plus either lunch or dinner, and then substitute either the lunch or dinner with a small, let's say less than 100 calorie snack. It could be fruit, it could be some nuts, it could be a small salad or something like that. Next slide. Yeah, so now I started two foundations, one in Los Angeles, the Create Cures Foundation, and one in Milan, Italy. And so at the foundation, we've been carrying out this, we follow lots of people, and this is, so we've done a study with 140 patients, which we haven't published yet, but I'll just show you some data from that. And so they did either the fasting-mimicking diet, once every few months, or they did the longevity diet, that I just showed you, or they did both, right? So ideally, we wanted to do both, and this were 140 patients, 40 obese, 40 overweight, 60 normal weight, next slide. And you see that this is just the results on body weight. So in just 5 months, you see that we have about 4.5 kilograms of weight lost in the obese group, about 2 kilograms, 2.5 kilograms in the overweight, and also the normal weight, there's a little bit of loss. So now we're looking at lots of different risk factors for diseases, and so soon enough we'll be publishing on that. But I just think that the nutrition is so important that if you can find somebody to follow you in India and work with you on this longevity and fasting-mimicking diet, I think it's very important. Next slide. Yeah, so next slide. Yeah, so disease risk goes up with diet, aging, genes, and either the longevity diet, the fasting-mimicking diet, or both are bringing back the disease risk, probably because they're bringing back just the functional state of the person and the biological age of the person. And so, by being younger and more functional, but also by having less fat and inflammation, et cetera, the system is gonna function better, but also live longer. And the next slide is just thanks to the lots of people that. Next slide. Yeah. Thanks to lots of people that have contributed to this work. These are just some of the people, but thank you. And this includes lots of students and researchers from India also. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Longo. So I want to start by asking you, would you recommend FMD every month? Because your book talks about that people should do it every 6 months. And also, can both men and women do it? Follow the diet?
Yeah, so both men and women can do it, and every month now we're testing that for diabetes patients. We have a study in Holland, which is finished, and soon enough we'll publish on that. Yeah, so if somebody has diabetes, then they can talk to their doctor and consider the fasting-mimicking diet once a month. But for most people, I think about 2 to 3 times a year. Of course, if somebody's overweight and obese, it might be 3 to 4 times a year. So it's just probably best to work with a professional, either a doctor or a nutritionist. But this has to be adjusted based on the risk factors and also the initial problems of that person, particularly abdominal circumference and abdominal weight.
No, but if it's a healthy person, can a healthy person do it every month? just to maintain weight and,
a healthy person should not do it once a month. The idea of the fasting mimicking diet is you do it when you need to do it. It's not about doing as much as possible. I mean, eventually it may be that we'll find out that this is so powerful that people should do it once a month. But right now, we're ready to say, do it about 3 times a year. And but if it's not enough, then you might have to do it once a month, because of weight and, again, being obese or being overweight and just eating too much, right? Remember the mice, right? That I just showed. They had a terrible diet, very high fat, very high calorie, and so once a month was necessary. And they returned to, for almost everything we looked at, to normal. But yeah, if you don't have a bad diet to start with, and if you don't have a bad weight and lots of problems, there is no need to do it once a month.
So there's no evidence that shows that it'll benefit healthy people if they do it every month. Yeah. So the other thing.
In the clinical trials, we've done it once a month, but we don't think that that's recommendable right now unless you have diabetes and your doctor agrees that you should do it once a month.
You mentioned biohacking. So do the benefits happen because you're shocking your body into another state? Because how exactly does cell regeneration take place?
No, it's got nothing to do with shocking. Some of my colleagues talk about these things. It's got nothing to do with shocking. It's got to do with the all organism, right? Even a bacteria, or a yeast, even unicellular organism. When you're starving, you become larger and larger. You accumulate lots of food, essentially lots of carbon sources. And then during fasting, you start using it, and you shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink, and eventually you can become very small, right? So so I always use a picture of my old mentor who did a long 2 years of calorie restriction and became very thin. And so you become very thin, and then at a certain point you re-expand, right? And this going thin because of fasting and then re-expanding is just an incredible process that starts the same, and this we've seen in mice very clearly, the same programs that you use when you're first born, right? What does it mean? That the organs start regenerating during the refeeding, right? And they're using the same rebuilding programs that are first used when during embryogenesis, when we are first born.
You also mentioned that people should select ingredients that our ancestors would have eaten. So does ethnicity and race play a role in how it affects our body?
Yeah, absolutely. So eventually we're going to have many thousands and thousands of diets for thousands and thousands of different people. So, somebody, just to think about celiac disease, right? So all of a sudden, if you're in the family, you have celiac disease and you have genetic predisposition, you may be not able to eat any bread and any food that has gluten in it. And and same thing for lactose intolerant, right? So if you're Norwegian, you're going to be lactose tolerant. So milk is not a problem for you. But if you're Japanese or Southern Italian, most likely you're going to be lactose intolerant, and so eating even a little bit of milk is gonna hurt you, and it might take you years to figure it out, right? So I think it's very important to think about what was it that your grandparents and your parents were eating all the time, and what was it that they were eating and they never bothered them, right? So most likely, I mean, this is not about picking what your grandparents ate, because they could have had a terrible diet. This is about looking at the longevity diet that I just told you about, and then look at the equivalent that is your grandparents ate, right? So, for example, in Italy, it may be my grandparents used to eat a lot of green beans. Maybe in India, it wasn't the green beans, but it was some other form of beans that were very common in India. So yeah, that's I think what I mean when I say eat what your grandparents used to eat.
You've also said that the effects are the highest for risk patients. So does it just slow aging, diabetes or CVD, or can it actually reverse it?
Well, I mean, we saw in the clinical trial the people that were pre-diabetic clearly returning to the normal state, right? So yeah, it definitely can reverse it. We, as I just mentioned, just finished a diabetes clinical trial. We haven't published it yet. So let's see what happens when we look at 100 diabetic patients. But certainly, I'll say that in the data so far with a few patients, we see reversal of diabetes. We see reversal of pre-diabetes, but we'll have to wait and see what the results of the formal clinical trial are to determine can it reverse diabetes in the general diabetic population.
But do you have any evidence on whether it can actually reduce the physical signs of aging? I mean, can I look 10 years younger if I follow your diet?
Yeah, so the paper we published in 2017 showed many changes that are associated with aging, so now we have a formal study on biological age, and this is in collaboration with Morgan Levine at Yale. So there are ways to measure biological aging, and so both at the molecular level and in the blood. And so that's what we're doing, and we hope to see that there is an actual reduction in the biological age.
Right. So can anyone go on your diet, or are there any contraindications? Do you advise, a visit to the doctor before starting a diet?
Yes, I advise a visit to the doctor, but yeah, most people between, say, age 20 and 70 can do it, but you have to be careful, right? So people that are anorexic, people that are pregnant, people that might have a disease and they're taking certain drugs. For example, it could be fasting and mimicking diet and fasting can be very dangerous if somebody's taking insulin or any insulin-like drugs. So yeah, always best to talk to your doctor before starting, and also trying to be careful that and know how this affects you.
What about children? Because obesity is also rising in children. Can they safely follow your diet?
Well, I think I wrote a book in Italy, in Italian and a few other languages a few years ago on children. And what we were recommending for children for everyday diet, we're recommending more of a Mediterranean diet, so not as restrictive as the one that I just showed you, the longevity diet. And also for the fasting-mimicking diet, we are beginning to start clinical trials on children. And the idea is it possible that, let's say a child that was overweight or obese, if they were given this in a very controlled environment. So the first clinical trial at the Children's Hospital in Genova is starting now, but this is for type 1 diabetes. So we're using that to see, and children are being hospitalized during the fasting-mimicking diet. So we want to see, are there any problems in children before we can do clinical trials on the children that do this at home. So yeah, we're going at it very carefully with the fasting-mimicking diet, but I think that the Mediterranean diet is probably a very good diet, but it should be regulated, meaning the starches, the pasta, the bread, the rice, the fruit juices, they should be limited. That's what we show in the book. That lots of people in Italy, Europe, United States, they take the Mediterranean diet, but then they abuse all the starches, all this, I call it in Italian the 4 Ps, so which is pizza, pasta, potatoes, So I think that the modification of the Mediterranean diet are probably the best for children.
So when people are following the diet, can we cheat at all? Are you allowed tea, coffee, maybe a glass of wine? Is that okay?
Yeah, tea and coffee and a glass of wine are fine for the longevity diet, so the everyday diet for the entire year. The fasting-mimicking diet, I think, should be done as described in the clinical trial, and we discourage tea is part of the fasting-mimicking diet, but coffee and alcohol are not, and we basically say don't do any of it unless you're about to quit. So you get to the point where you say, if I don't have a coffee today, I'm going to stop this fasting-mimicking diet. Then you should have the coffee rather than stopping.
So this is tea and coffee without milk and sugar.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
I mean, for everyday diet, you can have milk and sugar in the tea or coffee. There's nothing wrong with it. The problem is abdominal circumference and BMI, right? So if your weight is normal, if you're lean, that means that that milk and sugar in the coffee is not a problem for you. But and usually I say, don't worry about the sugar in the coffee as long as you put like a small spoon in it. Worry about, so for example, in Italy, we talked to pediatrician, everybody was convinced that children were becoming overweight and obese, because of junk food, And when we looked at it, we realized it wasn't junk food at all. They had very little, or sugary drinks, right? Those were the two culprits. But when we looked at it, they were eating 0.5 kilogram a day of pasta, bread, rice, potatoes. That's where the problem was coming from. It wasn't coming from the candy, nor from the sugary drinks. It was coming from, really a ton of this refined carbohydrates that were part of the Mediterranean diet.
We've run out of time, Professor, so I'm going to just end on a personal question. I read that you went to Italy to be a rock guitarist, and then you studied jazz, and then you switched to nutrition. So do you want to tell us why you got interested? How did you make the shift from your rock guitar, jazz to nutrition?
Yeah, so I came to the United States from Italy to study rock and jazz, and I did that for a while. And then I think I was 19 years old. And I realized that I had such a passion to study aging, So I quit the music department and jazz performance, and I went over to the biochemistry department, and I just told the chair of the biochemistry department, I want to study aging, So I started, studying chemistry and biology, and I thought that was the way, and it was probably the correct choice. So so I've always had an incredible passion for aging. Nutrition is just part of it. We also work on other fields of aging and not just nutrition.
Thank you so much, and thank you for choosing aging, because it's going to help us a lot. We're going to miss your music, but thank you again for joining us. Over to you, Sunita.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjit. And what a fascinating session. Of course, it means that many of us who are listening have to rework their diets according to what the doctor suggests and recommends. Thanks very much. Well, that brings us to day 3, end of day 3 of the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. But don't worry, we still have 2 more days of very exciting speakers coming up. For tomorrow, those of you who want a bit of a sneak peek, what we have coming up is Sundar Pichai. He'll be in conversation. And we also have a conversation with Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan. So stay tuned for that. Goodbye, and thanks for watching.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands of old, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology? Beyond innovations? Beyond mobility? Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
My parents. मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर।
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर।
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान।
हाय माँ।
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible India.